Hey everyone, what is up? I am Exit over here and I have a review for Arrow Season 7 Episode 13 Star City Slayer. There's going to be huge spoilers for the episode from this point on. So I think this was Arrow's first ever attempt at a serious horror themed episode, with maybe Season 2 Episode 3 Broken Dolls being a strong runner-up. This episode focused on a serial killer going after people who could be seen as threats to Oliver, which included many of his vigilante friends. Now, who do we know that is still alive who is a pretty big fanboy and champion of Oliver and his Green Arrow persona? You're damn right that it was Stanley Dover, a reveal most comic book fans knew was coming since early this season. Most of the prison arc really was setting it up to be Stanley Dover, since Stanley Dover is pretty much the only Green Arrow comic book character with the name of Stanley, so it wasn't too hard to connect the dots, but it was nice when we got the confirmation in episode 7, I believe, the prison outbreak Slapside of Redemption. But this was a reveal most comic book fans knew was coming. So thankfully the writers didn't attempt to make it this big thing, this big reveal. There were hints to it all throughout the episode that even people not familiar with the comics would have not been surprised when Stanley did end up revealing himself. I first off want to give a huge shout out to Brendan Fletcher and what could be one of the best pieces of insanity acting we've seen in the entire Arrowverse. When he was in a scene starting to freak out, I genuinely believed he would just start swinging his knife violently at anybody who dared to talk to him, even Oliver. Stanley also makes a reference about them wanting to send him to Arkham Asylum, to which he couldn't understand why. Yes, Stanley, I agree. How could anyone want to send you to Arkham Asylum? One thing about the storyline that completely caught me off guard was that Stanley is the one to slit Dinah's throat, leading to her being unable to use her powers in the future. This is probably a little hint that William might not appear in the show again, or at least come back to Star City until the Flash Forward start, mainly since when William first meets Dinah in the Flash Forwards, he's surprised to see her scar, which means 1, him, Oliver, and Felicity don't actually talk about this at all between now and when he finds out. 2, he never sees Dinah till then. It's a little bit weird. I'm surprised this is how they're playing this storyline out, since with the way William left, it doesn't really match up with his story in the future. Oliver and Felicity didn't abandon him. William was the one who wanted to leave. So this is kind of a big plot change, or even plot hole, I guess. But it's always possible they'll have William attempt to come home at some point, with the city being too dangerous. Oliver and Felicity tell him he can't, and thus he gets angry. He thinks they abandoned him, and he goes off on his own for 20 years. In my opinion, I hope they come up with something slightly more creative than this. William's story in present day has already been one of the worst aspects of both Season 6 and 7. So William's motive for some things go far beyond just childlike. They're so dumb sometimes that they would require a pretty big suspension of disbelief to be believable, and doing William's story this way will be another symptom of that. So I hope we can get something slightly more intelligent to at least make his last storyline on the show something to look back to more fondly. Another hella interesting plot thread that I really didn't expect this week was the leaving of Echo Kellum as Curtis Holt. So let me just go over really quick why this was so surprising. Unless a character is going to die on these shows, it's generally announced weeks or even months in advance when an actor, actress, or character is about to leave the show. On top of that, his storyline this episode came out of nowhere. There wasn't set up from previous episodes at all, and it kind of feels like Echo just walked into the writer's room while they were writing this very episode and just asked, could he leave the show? The storyline also wasn't very ceremonious, and it felt like any other usual storyline with Curtis. I assume this would just lead to a new plotline or something new for Curtis, and he'd either be back in a few episodes or we'd see new things for him. It wasn't until the episode ended and I saw Echo Kellum on Twitter post a big thing about how grateful he was for his time on the show, and I just kind of said, holy shit, Curtis is really gone. This is also kind of ironic, since when they did the fake death scene with him back in episode 11, I said that I wouldn't have really cared if he did die here, and to be honest, now that he has officially left the show, I feel the same way. Out of all the characters on the show, he was the one who I would have missed the least, had they chosen to exit, and he's done nothing of importance this season at all. He's just been a supporting character for Argus. So I'm not exactly heartbroken he's gone. Nothing against Echo Kellum, he's done a fine job with the work he's been given, but Mr. Terrific has just been so damn wasted on this show that I just hope this opens up the door for a new version of Terrific to appear in a different DC show at some point. Because realistically, anything would be better than what we got. Out of all the Arrow characters who have left over the years, say we do a reunion episode next season, Mr. Terrific's the one I would want to see back the least. Touching on the flash forwards, they were surprisingly a high point of the episode. How they ended last week with the re-emergence of Connor Hawke and revisiting the bunker kind of breathed new life into them and gave them something to look forward to. And admittedly, I think they lived up to them pretty well in this episode. It even included a fight scene between Roy Harper and Connor freaking Hawke, something I never thought we'd see on this show in a million years. Connor Hawke and Roy Harper also barely interact in the comics, but when they do, it's amazing, so I'm so happy we saw them interact here. The fight was actually pretty good as well. The music and everything worked pretty well with it. And it's nice to see that we seemingly have a future Team Arrow now with a mix of old characters and new characters. My only huge problem I had with these scenes was the reveal of Mia's heritage. I'm not a fan of them making her the child of Oliver and Felicity, plus the name Mia Smoke doesn't really roll off the tongue. I feel like they should have made an original character for this role rather than using Mia Dearden's template for it. It feels a bit of a disrespect to yet another huge part of Green Arrow's mythos. Unfortunately, the writing was on the wall for this reveal all season, and if anyone said they were truly surprised by this, I think they may just really not wanted it to happen. Besides Mia's heritage, I'm still pretty excited to see where they're going with these scenes. I have a feeling that I know where we're going with the endgame for the Flash Forwards. Basically, I think they're setting up a future in which the old Team Arrow is completely gone, retired, or dead, thus leaving the children of the old Team Arrow becoming the new Team Arrow. William, the son of Oliver, being the computer whiz or the Overwatch of the team, Zoe, Renee's daughter, being the new Black Canary, Connor Hawke, John Diggle's son, being the new Green Arrow, and finally Mia Smoke, Felicity's daughter, could conceivably fill the role of Spartan, Speedy, or Arsenal, though considering she is based on Mia Dearden, I think we'll see her adapt the name of Speedy. This is odd though, as out of all of these characters, the only one who is anyway proficient with a bow, or even has held the mantle of Green Arrow in the comics, is Connor Hawke. So people would think it's a no-brainer to make him the new Green Arrow. Only thing is that he's not near as important to the story as William or Mia. So I think it's likely the future team might just not use the Green Arrow as the leader of the team, and instead have William or Mia, in whatever role she plays, be the leader, with Green Arrow more like a supporting member. Despite them probably rotating Green Arrow out, I think this is actually a nice place for them to end Arrow, a future that's kind of hopeful with a new team to take place of the old one, and a symbol that there'll always be a Team Arrow in Star City, no matter the time, no matter the generation. Finally, something else that doesn't exactly add up this season for me is the introduction of Amoco Queen. We have about 3 to 4 main storylines running this season. We have the Dante stuff that's tying into the Suicide Squad and Argus stuff. With the Flash Forwards, we actually have 2 main Flash Forward storylines. The Vigilantes being the death of Star City thing and the blowing up of Star City. It's odd, but with the inclusion of the Flash Forwards, she doesn't seem to fit any of them. Every episode now is starting to paint a clearer image of what the end result of the season is going to be, but again, Amoco isn't really a part of any of it. Her character was prominent as frick in the first half, before we knew who she was. Once we found out, we got an episode and a half of fleshing her out, and since then, nothing. I thought she was going to end up playing some role in the Flash Forwards, but I don't think so anymore. And her story of finding the person responsible for killing her mother isn't exactly intertwined with any plot we currently have ongoing. At least not yet. What I'm trying to say is that I don't know why the writers felt the need to introduce Amoco this season. With everything else going on, maybe they need something small to pad out the first half until the main storylines got going, but I feel like maybe they should have cut their losses and decided to introduce Amoco fully next season. Although if she really is being set up to replace Oliver as Green Arrow, should he die in Crisis, I get why they would like to have a full season setting her up first. Overall, this episode had a lot to love. While it wasn't as big or explosive as last episode, this was more about tying up loose ends before we reached the final episodes of the season. It left a lot to speculate over, and while it definitely wasn't filler, it felt very much like a Freak of the Week episode from the early seasons. My only problem with this episode stemmed from William's story in the present being weak thus far. Curtis leaving didn't exactly feel like a parting, and I'm a little annoyed that they went with the most basic and formulated explanation for Mia's heritage. Other than that, however, I think this was a pretty strong episode of the show, and it's been more hyped than ever to see where we're going for the end of the season, since we still don't even know what the main storyline is yet. So I would give this episode a 8 out of 10. But thank you very much for watching, and if you enjoyed this episode, please if you enjoyed Arrow, yeah, please like this video. But if you also enjoyed this video, please like this video. Please consider subscribing as well. Thank you, and have a great day.